Welcome, Model Rail fans. My name is George. I wanted to take a moment and share my thoughts with you as to how I built this layout. Well, the key thing to making a successful layout for me was I wanted to have it all tied together. And what I mean by that is this. You have to know what you're looking for. And for me, I was looking for a layout that was complete as far as operation is concerned and scenery, simply a place and time, because you're telling a story. And that story has to signify everything that your layout is representing. Now let's pause right there and let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've actually had the opportunity to build a railroad in real life. I'm helping manage a construction project in New York City that's almost as tall as the Empire State Building. That's it right there over my shoulder. We're only a few blocks away. So I have an idea of the building process and how to put things together. Okay, so that's me there, and I'm part of the management team constructing a new train platform, train track, and switches. And if you look over my shoulder, we're actually installing a double crossover switch and ballast. And now, how ironic is that, and how cool? I had actually started my layout at home prior to being assigned to this construction project. So when we were laying track in real life, I was going home and laying track on my layout as well. And I thought that was very cool. This project taught me a lot about real-world railroad operations and construction operations on a railroad itself. So I wanted to model that and detail that on my layout. So you'll see that when you look at my layout also, the construction crews that are working it resembles the crews that I had experienced in real life when we were constructing this railroad. So I thought that was very cool, and I hope you find that very interesting as well. I just had to take a selfie. Here we are, we're building, a new train platform and installing train track while trains are running right behind us. And we're literally on the train tracks. So I thought that was very cool, and I wanted to share that with you. You can see the train passing right next to a construction site of the new train platform and train tracks. But what I wanted to show here is all those orange safety construction barrels separating us from the active railway. I wanted to model this also, so I reflected this on my layout back at home to enhance the realism. And you'll see those barrels scattered throughout my layout as well. You can see the ballast spreader. This is a real-world ballast machine. It rides the rails and spreads the ballast. I thought that was very cool. I'm actually standing right there while they're doing this. That was absolutely fantastic. Here you have track that we're installing in real life. You can see we're placing the ballast as well. Now what you see here in this construction photo is the orange safety barrels that are on the construction site and the pieces of track that are scattered throughout. I modeled this on my layout as well to enhance the realism. You can actually see we're bringing in construction materials on the rails, on the new installed train track. We have trucks that are riding the rails, pulling the flat cars that have material on them right to the new train platform. Now this is a real-life photo of our construction site while we were laying the train track. You can see an active train running right next to us parallel to our track. You can see the construction workers, you can see the timber, the lumber that's placed in between the tracks during construction, and the white trucks that are riding the rails. I modeled this in my layout as well at home. You'll see the white truck, you'll see the timber between the tracks while trains are running by and the construction workers on and near the tracks as well. This enhances the realism of the layout. Okay, so back to the layout. Now that I've told you a little bit about myself, let's talk about the concept of the layout. I decided to model upstate New York. I had seen the Adirondack and Lake Champlain title in a model railroad catalog somewhere, and it resonated with me. I thought it would be very cool to model that. Upstate New York is very green, it's mountainous, there's rock, there's wildlife, and there's these beautiful little towns that lead up to the Adirondacks that you have to travel through. And I thought that would be very cool to somehow model that. And you can see right there, I have the stamp Route 66 in the middle of the roadway. Now, the Route 66 that we all know does not go through New York. However, there is a New York Route 66. It does go to the base of the Adirondacks. It's not as big as the famous one, but it is real. It is there. So that was one of those little things that I wanted to show also to see if anybody would pick up on that. There is a New York Route 66 traveling to the base of the Adirondacks. So I put that there. I put it there for the sake of realism. I wanted my layout to be as realistic as possible. Another thing you're going to see in my layout is the small cemetery. New York has a very vast history, almost from the beginning of the United States. There are these little cemeteries scattered throughout all of New York State, including the upstate region, that were from the 1600s, 1700s, and 1800s. A lot of them are historical sites. So towns and railroads were actually built around the cemeteries. The cemeteries were there first. So they're almost out of place, if you will. You'll be driving down the street, and you'll see a tiny little cemetery right there. So I wanted to show that for the sake of realism. I wanted to show Lake Champlain as well. It is in upstate New York. It is very close to the Adirondacks. So it ties together very well with the theme and the story of my layout. We have the lake, we have the small town, we have the mountains, the rock, and the trees, and the wildlife to go with it. We have the tiny historical cemetery that's nestled in, almost out of place again, near the town. So all of this is significant in putting the story together of the layout being modeled. I also wanted to model the reason why the trains are there. So I made it a weekend getaway, where the weekend now, it's a nice summer day in New York. Everybody's assembled there for two reasons. There's a classic car showcase going on in the town, and this happens with people who collect classic cars. There are certain weekends where they all assemble to show off their cars in these towns. So this is one particular weekend that everybody's assembled in the town to bring all their classic cars to it. At the same token, the railroad is honoring fallen flag railroads. Those are railroads that are no longer in operation. They once existed, but they no longer operate for whatever reason. So here we have locomotives that have traveled that are in fallen flag railroad livery, such as the Katy, such as Rock Island and Chessie System, the Sioux, right? They've been painted in their original livery. They've come here to parade through the town and show everybody, what they used to be, to fly their colors. And that is the theme of my railroad. There it is, the Adirondack and Lake Champlain Fallen Flag Railroad and Classic Car Summer Showcase, July 13th, 2022. I put a date to it so when you're standing there and you're looking at it, you could say, okay, this is summer of 2022. This is pretty modern. So you have modern trains as well as historical trains, the steam trains. These are trains that in real life are saved. They do belong to a museum. Some are even operational, such as the Big Boy. Okay, let's talk about the street now in the town. I studied traffic patterns, real-world traffic patterns, and dimensions of the parking spots and the streets. And then I scaled them to 1/48 scale, which is O scale. So everything that you see in my layout is true to scale. I also wanted to show the bikers, right? These are weekend warriors. They're riding their bikes. They're going to commit a traffic violation right behind the police officer, the state trooper who is right there, by crossing the double yellow line. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to go straight, but they're making a left to probably go to the bar or to the Harley dealership that's on the corner. And there's also another police officer standing right there. So they're doing this right in plain sight, being the wild bunch that they are. Another thing I wanted to introduce was a little humor, a little fun for people who come to see the layout. And you see there's a zombie there in the back of the cemetery. So I have a little flashcard, when people come over, that, can you find these things, right? We have the crocodile by Lake Champlain, just like the movie in Lake Placid, where the crocodile is in the lake. Well, there he is, that woman is pointing to it. So we have the crocodile, I have the zombie, there's a snowman in the middle of the forest. Now keep in mind, right, the layout is themed in the summer, so the snowman shouldn't be there. But the thing is, can you find it? I have Bigfoot in the hills. He's in the backdrop on top of the rocks. You could see him in a previous video. So these are the fun little things that I introduced to the layout, again, for humor and a challenge. Can you find can you find it? It makes it fun. Here you have the construction workers and the work that I was talking about earlier that resemble my job site. The white truck, the workers, the steel rails and the timber and the wood that's in between the rails, and of course the orange safety barrels. There you see a little bit of wildlife. And here's this poor soul. He's a skeleton now. Probably fell off the bridge. Nobody's found him. And that introduces the humor that I was saying earlier. Can you find these things? Make it a little fun. Here we have a gentleman being chased down by Christine. That was a horror movie from back in the 80s. Again, that brings a sense of fun to the layout. Here we have a mini Grand Central Station with all the passengers outside. You know, Grand Central Station is in New York, but we have a mini version here in this upstate town. As far as prototypical operation of the layout, I followed what I call the 4 basic principles. They are any train, any track, any direction, at any time. What that means is, no matter the size of the train, or if it's a steam train or is it diesel train, the layout should be able to accommodate it. That's the first one for any train. The second one is any track. So again, any train should be able to traverse or change tracks on its own without having to be picked up and placed there. So it should be, you throw a switch and go from track to track to track on its own. The third one is any direction. The layout should be able to change the direction of travel of the trains, again, by throwing switches, not having to pick it up. And the fourth one is at any time. And what I mean by that is, whether it's a conventional train or a legacy train, they can run on the layout simultaneously. I can run multiple conventional trains, or I can run multiple legacy and conventional trains at the same time. Normally, you can't. So I have each track independent from the other. So if I'm running a conventional train on track number 1, I can run another conventional train on track number 2, or a legacy train on 3 and 4, and whatever combination, as long as they're on independent tracks. So, but again, they're operating on the layout at any time. And I wanted the layout to be fully operational in the sense that maximum capacity that it could possibly have in the given space. So I have 8 main lines, so in theory, I can run up to 8 fully loaded trains at the same time on independent tracks. Now, if I'm running multiple trains on the same track, which you can do with legacy trains, then the number is much higher. The most I've ever run so far is 17 engines on the layout, and you can see that in one of the videos that I've made. But I could still handle more. I can handle more than that. And I've provided enough power to be able to handle more than 17 trains at once on the layout. Thank you very much for watching. This concludes today's video. Bye.